Good day, everyone. Welcome to Archidex and welcome to this special panel, which is co-organized alongside with the Malaysian PropTech Association (MPA), in conjunction with the Asia Pacific PropTech Summit, which is happening very soon. First of all, I'd like to say that I hope that everyone's doing well and safe wherever you are tuning in. And today we're going to talk about a very exciting, interesting topic. And as we know, COVID-19 has impacted the world, and the property industry is by no means spared, right? And in form of architecture and all that, we are also looking into things on how to respond and react, especially more importantly now. The word that is in season is acceleration. People are saying that technology is advancing 5 to 6 years because of the pandemic. That's the fastest and the main cause of digitalization and digital transformation. So today's panel, we will talk with three very distinguished and experienced people that will talk about how the industry has responded, especially the architecture industry responded to COVID-19, and what are the best practices moving forward. So allow me to introduce our speakers for the day, our panelists. Firstly is architect Mustafa Kamal Zulkarnain, an Auckland University alumnus from New Zealand who has been practicing architecture for the past 27 years and is a fellow member of the Malaysian Institute of Architects, Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, PAM, and has served 6 terms as PAM Council member from 1997 to the year 2000, and as well as 2014 to the year 2017. He still sits in various PAM committees. He was also a devoted Rotarian. He's currently the committee members in the Housing and Urban Wellbeing of PAM. He's also heading the task force in the PAM strategic plans in 2030 on architecture, cities now and the future. His areas of expertise is urban resilience. Apart from this, he was also the co-chair in the media and publication of PAM committee. He first muted the idea of resiliency into the vocabulary of the committee, urban well-being, sustainability, housing and environment resilience, usher in 2014, as the co-chair that was in charge in preparing the report for the government of Malaysia through PAM for the Kuala Krai 2014 floods, entitled Strategic Planning. So welcome to the panel, Encik Architect Mustafa Kamal.
Halo, apa khabar?
Kabar baik, good to have you on this panel.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have architect Nicholas Ling, who is a partner of Concept Asia Sdn Berhad. Nicholas has extensive experience in the design and delivery of large-scale private and institutional/public buildings. He has demonstrated ability in managing and engaging complex stakeholders groups and multidisciplinary project teams across various procurement platforms. Prior to founding Concept, Nicholas led the delivery of public projects with a combined value of over 1 billion Australian dollar, including the recently completed 1.4 billion Lady Celento Children's Hospital in Brisbane. Nicholas' research-based critical design approach brings to project to focus on evidence-informed solutions and lateral design thinking. He is committed to ensuring build outcomes and add value to all stakeholders involved, the client, the users, and the greater community. Nicholas currently leads the Melbourne office and heads up design research at Concept. Before returning to Kuala Lumpur, he sat on the board of a private museum in Melbourne and contributed to the undergraduate and master's program at the RMIT University. Welcome to the panel, Nicholas.
Hi, Jason.
Hi, glad to have you here. And thirdly on the panel is Dr. Daniel Gambero, who is fondly known as the Proponomist. So Dr. Daniel is an expatriate in Malaysia from Italy since the year 1998. He's a serial entrepreneur in property and PropTech, and currently the group CEO and co-founder of strategic marketing consultant firm REI Group of companies and PropTech startup Proponomy.com. He holds a master in macroeconomy, one in marketing, and a PhD strategic marketing in mass communications in the University of Bocconi and University of Michigan. Dr. Daniel is the president of the Malaysian PropTech Association and a sought-after strategic consultant for private and public industry players and government agencies on market research and studies on affordable housing developments. Dr. Gambero is also the best-selling author of Malaysian Proponomy. He sits on numerous roundtables and advisory boards as PropTech and sustainability property development expert. He has been appointed the Malaysian ambassador in the PropTech for Good network, a global movement aiming to betterment of property ecosystems following the guidelines of SDG 2030 and ESG. Dr. Gambaro is frequently called as a judge in local and international startups pitching competition, and as a mentor for young talented startups. He's regarded as a property and PropTech KOL and is a well-known and sought-after international and TEDx speaker. Welcome, Dr. Daniel.
Thank you, Jason, for the invitation. Glad to be here. Hi, Mustafa, Architect Mustafa. Hi, Architect Nicholas.
Yeah.
Hi, Doctor.
Hi, Daniel. Hi.
And last but not least, I'll just introduce myself real quick. I am Jason Ling, the co-founder and the chief marketing officer of MHub. So MHub is listed as one of the 12 hottest fintech startup according to FinTech News. Okay, I'm also the Asian Startup Awards 21 finalist in the Founder of the Year category. So just a bit of background of MHub is a recipient of the Agency Inovasi Malaysia Platform Ventures grant, a finalist in the Cyberview Living Lab Accelerator Program, Magic Global Accelerator Program, Huawei Spark finalist, and the only Malaysian shortlisted for the Google Startup for Accelerator Program. MHub is Malaysia's leading PropTech transaction platform with more than 70,000 bookings in a total value of USD 24 billion. We're proud to say that 10 of the top 15 real estate companies in Malaysia are using MHub's suite of apps for end-to-end property transactions online. So our focus is on digitalization, digital transformation of the 4 key areas in the property transaction, which is marketing, sales, post-sales, and property management. So quite a mouthful. I think in this panel itself, we have a wealth of experience and different things that we are involved in. Mainly myself and Dr. Daniel in the PropTech area, and Architect Mustafa and Architect Nicholas in the architecture area side of things. But I think what we can agree is that COVID-19 and the pandemic has caused, like I mentioned earlier when we started, great acceleration, and the word is acceleration. Before this, maybe our developers, the different ones that's using our services were a bit slow, or maybe a bit more careful, or a bit more, they had the luxury of time in responding. But then because of COVID-19, everything just moved fast, right? And I think we've seen so much excitement in the past 2 years. But before we talk about the impact of COVID, maybe I could just invite the 3 of you to share what you have been the focus of your firms and organization prior to the pandemic. What is the area that your firm is focused on? Architect Mustafa Kamal.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. Okay, for past 20 odd years, what we have been pursuing is towards livable and also healthier buildings, and also master planning development. We started off with designing the Gati Corridor plan development and the Gati Corridor Expressway. From that on, we moved on to that Denai Alam, which won the most innovative township. That also stems from the green ecosystems, and from there we also move on to having a resilient development, where now we are culminating doing upgrading of hospitals and medical facilities. So that's what we've been doing all this while, and even up to now, even though online, is doing those sort of coordination and also designing. Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely, I think Mustafa Kamal, those of you who are in the industry, you would at least heard that name in peripheral somewhere in publication or somewhere here and there. So I think your work really is quite almost a house. I think we can say a household name. Your name, at least your brand, at least. So glad to have you in this panel and for sharing today. Let's hear from Architect Nicholas from Concept Asia.
We are probably a newer kid on the block, so our focus has been in commercial mixed use. I come from a health planning background, actually, so hospitals, medical facilities, aged care. So we've been quite busy in the last 2 years in that space, working on a fairly large hospital in KL. But yeah, mostly mixed use commercial buildings, ranging from your big box shopping malls to offices, residential developments, mostly in that space.
All right. Are there any projects you could share firsthand?
Maybe an interesting one is the hospital we're working on in Bukit Jalil, a private hospital. So that's a fairly interesting job, with fairly progressive clients who is willing to explore. And I guess at that time, so we started work on this 2 years ago. At that time, ideas that were ahead of his time, but now in the light of the last 2 years, you could see that he was able to see beyond the curve a bit. was thinking ahead of all of us a bit. So it's nice to see those ideas now break ground, and hopefully we'll see fruition in a couple of years' time.
And prove to be very relevant at this moment, right?
I think so. Yes.
Dr. Daniel.
Well, my side, I have two sides of the coin. One is the business side, and the other one the association. Business-wise, a couple of years ago, we were very much focused in data analysis, data collection, data analysis, and reporting, consequent reporting, mostly towards the development of affordable township, focusing very much on East Malaysia, Sarawak, the state of Sarawak. We have been doing a lot of work there. And as a Malaysian PropTech Association, at the time I was a deputy president, and the move, the fire at the time was just starting, kind of, in terms of attracting new members, becoming more relevant for the industry, trying to connect in a proper manner, in the proper way with the government organization, government agencies, to get the Malaysian PropTech Association recognized as industry representative official association. PropTech at the time, MPA, PropTech was not yet well known, first of all, and there was very little awareness on the real meaning of what PropTech means, a bit like propenomi. I am probably attracted by this funny word. But PropTech has been something that has been around for the past 40 years, actually. And slowly, we have been bringing this knowledge about the technology applied to property to the big market, consumer market, business market, government market. And slowly, we have been start being recognized, start being looked after till what is happening nowadays with a fantastic new committee team, of which you two, Jason, are part, running really toward very much high achievement. And one of them is this apps 2021 that you see behind me. Later, maybe I will, in the closing, I will say something about it.
Right.
But definitely preparing startups, preparing business-wise my developers client or the government agencies to look after the market into a totally different way. That is what I was mostly doing in 2018, 2019.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. And I definitely agree on what Dr. Daniel said, that if we look at the global market, right, globally, when we talk about property development, I think Malaysia is very much, it's very vibrant, and there's a lot of developments that's happening. In fact, for people from other countries who come to Malaysia, they say, wow, there's so many projects happening at the same time, versus maybe in their own countries where it's already a very matured market. And hence the byproduct of the development is where we see innovation, we see new ideas, and definitely PropTech. I think Dr. Daniel also in his different talks and being panel in judges and everything, we see that, wow, there's more PropTech companies in Malaysia than anywhere else probably we can observe. That's as far as we can see. So there's a lot of excitement here. And also in a nutshell, PropTech basically means property in technology, which is very much related also with what both of you are doing in your respective firms. So for myself, actually, M-Hub has always been in the space of digitization and digitalization of the property transaction process. And we've always been focused on that and making software which is easy for people to use with the ease of it. Because property transaction is a very complex and complicated process. It takes up to 6 to 9 months. But what we've done and what we've observed is that with technology, we can speed the whole process into just probably below a month, because of the way how like even e-commerce is being simplified, or even transportation. And what we've observed, okay, and I'm leading into our next question, is that because of COVID-19, our users, which is real estate developers, property agents, bankers, lawyers, are quick to adopt because they have no choice, because the lockdown has caused limitation and barriers in doing what they're supposed to do, right? And so I want to hear from our panel here today, what has the impact of the pandemic been to the industry as a whole you've observed, as well as to your firm? So I'll start with Architect Mustafa, please.
When we talk up about COVID, right? The most impact will be the first few weeks we are okay. Then after that, the client just stopped the work, and we got to actually move into a different realm, and we got to think ourselves of how to move forward, and we have to actually ensure that the meetings carry on. Then we got to reassemble ourselves, and luckily that our office have got good, what you call a digital communication. So we have created not just a WhatsApp group, but we also have got a Telegram group. We've got all the Zoom calls, and every morning what we do is we have a roll call at 9 o'clock, and another roll call at about 3:30 in the afternoon. So what we try to do, we try to actually assemble so that people feel that they are also wanted, and we also wanting them. So there's no, how should I say, fallback. And for our clients also, we make sure that they have got some form of connection and communication. So there not a problem of communication, but the only thing is how to actually explain people in the shortest possible mode about what you draw, so that people can understand in the most easiest words. And I think, your left become my right become your left, and your bottom become your top. So we need to actually coordinate in different. So what we have done is we already created a system. So the system is whenever we are looking at a certain thing, there is actually a second drawing on a different tablet or whatever, so that we can talk and discuss together. I think that's probably because I think architects, we got to be innovative how to communicate lah, and without that we cannot survive. Mustafa, and speaking. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Architect Mustafa. Architect Nicholas, do you share the same struggles, or how do you think the pandemic affected the industry as a whole as well as your firm?
Yeah, I think I share everything that Architect Mustafa has raised and mentioned. I think we all do, right, in some capacity. I think our industry as a whole, as most industries, I think we were caught off guard a bit. I think we sort of, like all human beings, we think it'll blow over pretty quickly, and it didn't. And then we think 2021 will be better, but it wasn't. So it's that. So I think we adapted very quickly. I think having we are a full BIM office, so that enabled a very easy transition to work from home and remote working, because we've got teams in Australia as well as in Cambodia. So that was already a methodology, or at least a way of working that we were quite accustomed to. It just meant that we didn't come into the office. So I think in that sense, the transition from an office point of view is quite seamless. The hard part, I think, as Architect Mustafa raises, was finding a common vocabulary, right? Because your understanding of what I say may not be what it means to you, and obviously, with internet connections and kids running around, I think all that, the everyday life got in the way. So we had to develop a vocabulary within the office, within our teams, to say, okay, when we say this, it's that. Same thing with our clients, right? To establish a common code, a vocabulary of sorts, so that we understood each other. Took a while, I think, but by the time the second MCO came around, I think we were quite fluent in that new language with our clients. So it took some time. But I think we've learned a lot of things that, like, for example, we may not need such a big office anymore, or we learn to use as few words as possible to communicate something. We learn to be a bit more succinct. So I think these are all good lessons we carry away and move forward with.
Yeah. Thanks for weighing in, Architect Nicholas. What about Dr. Daniel?
Well, the pandemic has been highly disruptive. We have been stepping from a panic situation and feeling into a euphoric type of situation, because somehow, business-wise, I found myself deciding to move my staff towards a work from home type of mindset exactly 1 month before the pandemic. I don't know from where, but we sat down with our staff and saying, guys, girls, what do you think? So I found myself stepping from a 5,000 square feet into a 1,500 square feet. All my team mostly working from home, coming into the office once a week just for a short meetup. When pandemic hit, not really the business side has been kind of threatening. We were already kind of prepared for that. But it's all that comes along, the communication, as you are saying, a new way of working, a new way of acting as a professional, as a president of an association. Associations are normally based on interaction between members. So we had to learn a totally new way of interacting in a virtual way. And you know what we discovered? That is much, much easier, faster, splendid, beautiful. In a meeting nowadays, people can have 6, 8, or even 10 meetings with every corner of the world without moving one step out from our house, which is a huge advancement, which have been helping in connecting on an international, on a global manner, driving in new ideas, exporting your ideas, connecting to new opportunities in a way that no one could have been imagining 2 years ago. So if you ask me, now I'm sitting at 8 steps from my bedroom, about 20 plus steps to my living room, and about 30 steps to my kitchen. So I'm very happy. And I'm not going back to a physical office. I'm actually keep on growing my team. Oh, by the way, the team, when we entered in the pandemic, was 15, 16 people. We are now above 25. I'm very much keep on growing because business is there just to be taken. Opportunities are there just to be picked up and shared with the community, of course. MPA has been flourishing like never before. Before was always a matter of saying, where are we going to do the gathering? Who is putting up his office for that? How to organize, how to bring in the guests. Now we do a gathering organized in probably 3 days. We invite a speaker from Australia, one from UK, and one from Europe. And all our members are, wow, yes, we want to come. And from 35 members, we step up to more than 70 in less than 12 months. That is per se already clearly stating how positive has been the impact on the pandemic, with all the respect for all the ones that have been hit badly instead. But it's always a matter of looking at it with the eye of a challenge, okay, the feeling of, okay, life is throwing to me this challenge, let's move forward, adapt. Adapt is a keyword, was a keyword 24 months ago. Now the keywords has become endorse, enable, and probably speed up a bit the implementation, because that is where we are moving towards.
Yeah. Exactly, I resonate with that completely, Dr. Daniel. The word that I caught was acceleration, like I mentioned. So how do you accelerate the adoption of technology? And for us, I think really it's for all the PropTech company or those who claim to be technology-based companies. The last 2 years was a challenge, was a test to say that, hey, you say you want technology, now you're being tested. Are you able to live in the? Are you willing to be a digital native in that sense, right? So for M Hub, we were actually toying with the idea of remote work for the longest time. How are we going to allow our team to work from home or from wherever it is that they want to work? And then COVID happened. So it just sped up our own implementation of it. And we're happy to say that we managed to do a lot of it well in terms of we do like check-ins, like what Architect Mustafa said, like the morning check-ins and the stand-ups, and also one-on-ones and virtual events, and we even did an online kind of like an interest-based clubs, right? Within our organization, there's a movie hub, there's a designer hub, movie hub, makan hub, there's a gamers hub, there's all this fit hub which you get into fit because everyone's getting fat, right? So you need to get fit as well. So we implemented all these kind of things. But of course, nothing really beats that human connection, and that is still a struggle, and that's something we're still trying to overcome as much as possible. But really, I think as we are observing, yes, the economy is reopening, and yes, people are going out more and more. But I think we will not be the same. We won't go back to the same as how it was before. We have moved into a status of endemic. And today itself, I've not heard of new cases for the past weeks, but today, this morning itself, I heard of two from two different offices, right? So that's the reality we're living in now. And that's something that we need to plan moving ahead, especially for those who are providing solutions for engaging and connecting and even lived spaces or communities or smart cities, right? Which is what we're talking about today. So let's move on to the next question, which is how have you observed that the industry as a whole responded? I know you've answered in a broad sense, but let's go deeper into it. What has the industry responded? How has it responded? And what is it that is in a not just in the working of your organization, but in a sense of how do you propose your projects, or how do you approach your projects moving forward? Because there's new considerations, right? Maybe in the past it's all about profit, or it's all about what's the most I can make from this land. But now it's also there's a safety consideration, there's a wellness consideration, there's also all these kind of things, lower density instead of high density, all these kind of things that's is before this, if say 5 years ago we don't even consider as much, but now we have to be brought front and center. So I would like to hear from the panel, how has the industry responded in light of what we know of new living environments or locations? Because I also, if you've seen the trends as well, even consumer markets have changed. What they're looking out for and what they are buying and where they are willing to work or where they're willing to stay is all different from how it was before, because again of COVID-19 and the pandemic or whatever that's going to come down the road. Even the experts, when I have conversations with them, they say we never know. The next thing may come very soon, and we don't even know what it will look like. Maybe even more aggressive than COVID-19, right? So I would like to hear again one circle, and feel free to jump in, anyone. Starting with Architect Mustafa. What's your observation in approaching projects these days?
Generally, I don't, in my office, I don't use new normal. What I'm using in my office is new reality, because it's a reality again. Because normal means you go back and you take the new. To me, there's no more new. You cannot go back to the old one. It's a new reality altogether. So the first thing first is I put the wellness and also health of my staff first, because without my health and wealth of staff, I cannot move forward. I cannot do any work. My office will not tolerate it. So we must ensure that they got a good medical facility. Then number two, we are now approaching the importance of hygiene, the importance of livable, and also the importance of sustainable in terms of what we are doing. So meaning that even though we go to office, but I don't shall I say, make it compulsory. They go when they need to go, but they know the work is being done. But my secretary, yes, she goes to the office. She's the only person in the office there, so that I can control. There's only one person in that office. There's actually from 9 to 6, there's only one. No other parties, so there will not confusion. And if they need, or if she needs to communicate with people, there is a call, there is actually a text or an email or telegram chat, or even the telegram call or whatever call. So that's what you do. And another one is, first, we also do basically office spring cleaning. What do? We actually get rid of all the blockage that were at the edge of the office, which is actually the windows. We try to open windows to allow for cross ventilation from front to the back, and I think that's very, very crucial, so that you allow that there is a flow of air. Then number two, the air condition now is regularly being filtered, and we clean it up, and those are the things that we try to do. And probably next one is we have cubicles. We alternate the cubicles, and we have alternate staff coming to the office. So maybe today group A goes to the office for 2 days, then another group goes to the office for 2 days, by using at the same cubicle that's there. So there will not be how should I say, cross interaction. Two different projects. So one project come on one day, the other project come the other day. If you have three, then they make sure that they can rotate on the third set of the day. So that's probably how we do it. And so far, that's so far have done quite well. And so far, there's no break out of cases. Mustafa, that's speaking. Thank you.
So, Architect Mustafa, you brought up a very, very important point, which is ventilation, and I think that's something that we will bring up again after a while. But in approaching your clients' projects, are you then looking into more ventilation considerations as well
Oh
when
yeah, yes, yes, yeah. In fact, we are going into COVID compliant design for all our buildings. COVID compliant. So there is a checklist of 1, 2, 3, 4. No, and in fact, not just that. Even in PAM also, we are working. I'm one of the committee members there. We are looking into 9 different categories of building types using the UBL as the basis. So I'm part of the committee there. So we are doing a COVID compliant check for existing and new buildings.
Yeah.
Together with public open spaces, temporal spaces like pasar malam, all sort of things, so that people know what to do. And because sometimes people do SOPs, right? They think the SOP is good, but when practical, the SOP doesn't work because we are the designers. We use the space. We know how much space you really need. So this is also another issue that we can
Yeah.
tackle and handle it well, because we are the one that's really involved in the built environment. So
Great, great. We'll love to hear more from you later on about what else is in that list. But I'll move on now to Architect Nicholas. How have you responded as your firm actually? How has COVID-19 and what we know about COVID or pandemics in general informed your decisions in approaching your projects?
I would love to look at that list from Architect Mustafa. Because I would assume and I would suspect that list will be filled with fundamentals, right? Like our buildings nowadays have departed so far from the good old days where of the single loaded corridors. And you wind it even further. I grew up in a small town. I'm a Kuching boy, East Malaysian. My neighborhood at that time, the terrace houses were a lot wider. The streets were a lot wider. If you wind it even further back, visiting my grandparents on holiday, the kampong. So we've gone from that format of living and communing and gathering to these high rises, of where you pack in 1,000 units, right? And nothing wrong. I'm a big fan of density. I think it's sort of the most sustainable way of using land, where you get more kind of units or footprints out of a small piece of land rather than sprawl and cutting down more forests and having to link them by big roads. So I'm a big fan of density, but I do question, I guess, how we've gone about doing that. I mean, I am at least party to that, I guess, rolling out of these types of buildings. But I would suspect that list that Architect Mustafa is working on will bring back fundamental things like, natural ventilation, like cross ventilation, access to natural light, density. How do you manage it? How do you break down 1,000 units into smaller clusters? How do we create now recognizable communities again? So maybe it's a winding back of a clock. Maybe is our questioning as architects, developers, of the fundamentals. As you mentioned, Jason, yes, it is about money. That's not, but there are ways to get about to the end point. So I think it's been a really good time. We've enjoyed probably in the last 2 years, as you mentioned, in a tech space, we've had the funnest time, at least from a design point of view. And I'm no way playing down the negative aspect of the pandemic and people who have suffered and have been impacted by it. But we've enjoyed a really good time of innovation, where a lot of the ideas that we put forward before the pandemic are resurrected in a way because they're relevant now, right? Fundamental ideas. I'm not talking about rocket science. I'm talking about how to meaningfully and in a dignified way create homes for people, where you don't pack them in as sardines. So I think that's how we're approaching things now. In a way, we have not changed at all. I think that's always been our way of approaching projects to start with. I'm sure Architect Mustafa shares the same belief. But it just means that perhaps these ideas are a lot more relevant than they were, say, 2 years ago.
Thanks for saying that. Dr. Daniel, anything to weigh in on this in your own observation on smart cities and how I think...
Can I speak for a couple of hours?
Please do.
It's definitely a super interesting topic. Well, the pandemic is turning upside down how we were looking at smart cities, how we were looking at SDG 2030, how we were looking at smart building within smart cities, TOD, which was one of the property only 3 years ago. Nowadays, if you ask me, is totally abandoned. Why? Because you cannot live in a family with your family in 500 square feet, working with a kid crying and a wife that is also working. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. So it's a bit, as Mustafa was saying, return to the origin, return to our root. We look at suburban development without exaggerating. I am a big supporter, architect Nicholas, of the kind of a supporter of a proposal to cancel the use of the word sustainable and start using instead regenerative.
Yeah, agree.
We know the meaning of sustainability, maintaining the status quo. Do we
Exactly.
want to maintain this mess? We cannot afford to do that. We need to regenerate what we damaged in the past 100 years.
I agree.
So how do we do that? We can think about self-sustainable smart township in the suburban areas to take completely away the horrible habit of cut and fill hills, follow the geographical profile. If there is a slope, simply say that is undevelopable land, period. Period.
Yep.
Respect nature from that point of view. Cut one tree, plant 3 at least, better 5 if you can. Create a proper. How many development there are still around which are not designed with the universal concept, which is the ABC of sustainability? How many the building, even at government level, are still having architectural barrier for OKU, disabled people? It doesn't make sense. We need to bring in a change, and the pandemic is helping enormously. One thing that the pandemic has been bringing in was already mounting as a wave, was the transformation of the 6 pillars of smart city: governance, environment, people, mobility, environment, and I'm missing one. What is the last one? Economy. These were the 6 pillars, have now become 7, because finally all the governments around the world have been understanding that we need a smart digital infrastructure if we want to have smart cities of the future. And the digital infrastructure shouldn't be limited to the city center, but should be spanning around the country, because otherwise we cannot be connected as we would like to. How often it happens during a Zoom of lagging images, of breaking sound, oh, I need to switch off my camera. Every time it happens. We need to step over this. We look into 5G. I pray God that really 5G is going to happen very soon in Malaysia. We need that desperately. Why? Because with 5G and IoT, we can transform all our dumb buildings in smart buildings. And this is what the pandemic has been enormously accelerating. So change, smaller office, plenty of unused office, which will become a curse in the near to come, unless we find a way of redevelop, rethink how to use this space. There are people testing vertical farming in former building office, and it's working. Co-working space under condominium. You can have 1,000 square feet home, then you create a huge co-working space in one floor without doing any longer all these commercial spaces that are normally remaining empty or unsold. You just do co-working space. You manage it properly. Digital transformation brought to the next level in terms of property development. And then I better stop here, otherwise I really go ahead for another 1 hour plus. But I really love about talking about this with people knowledgeable as the three of you are. Musa, with Musa, we have been judging project for Property Guru for many years, and we know how many times we have been putting our hands in our hair, entering a project and say, "Oh my God," true or not, Musa?
Yeah, very true, very true.
I mean, I love what is being shared, and I love keywords there. Like not just sustainable but regenerative, right? That's a very powerful thought there, and if you can work towards that, will be something which is a very beautiful. And also what you mentioned about the different things. But I would like to unpack even further. What do you think are the trends globally, or even if you like, even in Malaysia, that you would see moving forward in the next 2, 3, 4 years? I think that the fear is everything will go back to normal, because COVID-19 is somewhat managed, although the cases we can't go back to normal. But the thing is, I don't know, sometimes we humans take a while to learn. But what do you think are ideal scenarios, or what are you optimistic about, or what do you think? It can be in commercial spaces, it can be in residential spaces, it can be just in town planning, whatever it is that comes to mind. What are the exciting trends you've seen, either globally or once again, if you any thoughts to in your own projects coming forward in Malaysia? Mustafa.
Number one, the golden word. There'll be new jobs. The jobs will be adaptive reuse. Now is reconsideration of all the existing stocks. All new buildings will be reconsidered. All existing buildings will now be up for grabs, because they got ready infrastructure, ready things, but you need to upgrade. And not just upgrading, you may reorganize back. So, sometimes malls easily converted to hospitals. Why? They got high floor to floor height, very easy, done already. Car parks, a lot of plenty. Then above it, they got maybe some form of short tower or whatever. It's just a reconfiguration of things. That's new, one of the new works. Another one is reconfiguration of office building to apartments, condominiums. I saw in New York, they already converted one office into an apartment, where it's actually quite close to a thing. Hotel reconverted into what they call the not just quarantine center, but it's become they call it a staycation for people under COVID quarantine, so that they can stay there, and everything inside the room there is actually for working, for staying. So they don't have just the room, they got an access room that they can become a recreation room, and they got a balcony outside there. So the idea is you now have got to reinvent the thing that balcony places are sought after. Any property got balcony, I'll take it. Any balcony that got a cross-through ventilation, I'll take it. Any development that has got multiple blocks and they got access to TOD and they got access parking, that's great. So now any of those will be up for grabs, and the bankers now have got to play a new game to actually look at the reconstitution or reconfiguration of buildings. And I think that's a new way, because they know the building is there, it's only changing use. And now we can actually have a good work between ID and consultants to be looking at how we can have an integrated livable. Sometimes building can be reconfigured from stack by stack. You just created holes in between, you can see light coming through or something. So these are things. And one more thing, like for instance, Post Malaysia has already bought one whole mall. It's become their area for distribution for all their Lazada, all their Zara things, because whatever they have now is not enough. So they now got multi-levels parking, access to each floor is all their storage. So it's easier to handle those sort of things rather than, in those big warehouses where everything's single level. So those are new jobs, new things, exciting things going to happen. And I think one of the biggest things going to happen is because KL is undergoing this PSKL 2040 with the new structure plan. I already voted, and in fact, there are 2, 3, one of the what called sesi bantahan, or we call I call it a place where we declare that we don't like what you were planning, is you need interconnected green places. So they create a healing corridor. You know what happened in Wuhan is they created holes in the big hospital so that daylight can come through. They got cross ventilation, so that's how people recuperate faster. And then, but they destroyed it because they don't have any more COVID. But whatever it is, the principle is the same. It's a cross ventilation, connected green spaces, healing corridors, and cities needs those just like our house needs those cross ventilation. The cities needs cross ventilation, and also the cities now need to have connected green spaces so that people can cycle to work, walk to work, or even use the BRT between the green spaces. And I think that will be a new way of approaching. Like Paris, they got 15-minute city. Actually, 15-minute city they can do because it's already there. The buildings are all done. We are still building, so it's only how we connect that. Probably ours will be a different principle altogether, which is actually I call it as interconnected cities, where things are actually you have something in a certain place, but you only need to take the transit corridor. So that transit corridor is where I was talking about the healing corridor, the greenways. So we have got pockets green, but you need all to get connected. I think we need to change with time, and I think we need a paradigm shift or looking at things at the not just helicopter level, but at the 4 feet level. Mustafa,
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love what you're sharing. We're talking about spaces recontextualized and spaces reimagined. And I definitely resonate on what you say about huge corridor. I'm in a huge balcony. I'm in the balcony right now because I chose this unit. I only moved in 3 months ago. I chose it because of the balcony. Because who knows when we will be locked down again. But I am able to use this space and get natural sunlight. And it's a very big consideration. If it wasn't a consideration 5 years ago, it definitely is right now. Dr. Daniel, I saw you raise your hands.
Yeah. One very short thought, food for thoughts. What about all professional parties finally coming to a point of introducing compulsory green building standard to obtain a development order? Architect Mustafa and architect Nicholas. Because nowadays in Malaysia, we all know we do not have not even that very first simple small step towards a more, let's use the old way, sustainable type of development. And it's ridiculous to me, really ridiculous. We need to bring in this type of change because digitalization can bring in wonders, fantastic things, really. And the creative architect, as both of you are, can really reinvent the way buildings are designed, constructed, and made smart. But still, there is this big obstacle in terms of saying, let's be all more sustainable. I know plenty of developers and very close to most of them. And I know that every time I say this, they look at me with some thunderstorm coming out from their eyes towards me. But we need to come to that point. I mean, there is no other way to move forward. Sorry.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think this conversation is happening everywhere. It's just that probably in Malaysia hasn't caught up. We haven't caught up speed yet. Like just recently, so there's a climate change a conversation happening in COP with the UN in Glasgow, right? And they're all talking about how can we, as a world, as industries and markets, how can we actually really be more progressive in the zero footprint, zero carbon footprint. And there are many countries that's making already different commitments in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But we are, I think, sad to say, lagging behind in that conversation. But I'm curious to know, again, a bit more what you guys think. I mean, or where we can achieve or what we can achieve based on what you see moving forward in the next 2-3 years. Architect Nicholas, you talked about the wellness city, right, in Bukit Jalil. Maybe you can unpack that a bit more and maybe share some interesting elements or there are features there, because you mentioned something about drones and the way it's being looked at is different. So I think there's something to look forward to. I know it may be far away from the conversation, but at least there's something that's moving forward. I would love to hear from you, Architect Nicholas.
Yeah, I like the way where this conversation has sort of converged, right? I prefer to look at sustainability through the lens of wellness, right? Because like it or not, I think when something is well, it's usually sustainable. And Doctor is right. Sustainability as a word or as a thing is still optional in a place like Malaysia. I think we're catching up. Maybe 5-10 years ago, GBI was a very new thing, and it was something you had to, at least perceived, and still is in the industry, as something you have to pay for. So there's some cost and some pain and some, upgrading of a building to achieve a certain star, right? I think that mentality and that sort of way of thinking is a bit archaic. As you mentioned, Doctor, I would lobby for that. I'll lobby for this whole thing to no longer be optional. It should be fundamental, as you would. Nowadays we don't use asbestos in our ceilings anymore because they kill people. Neither do we want our buildings to be unhealthy spaces. So I think sustainability needs to be thought of hand in hand. I'm hopeful. I'm not sure about trends moving forward, but I'm hopeful that there will be equivalent sort of thinking around wellness. The list that architect Mustafa is looking at, right? And a way to sort of, and a metric to measure wellness, to rate wellness, to give it stars or whatever, at least to bring it into the center, front and center of people's thinking, if it's not already. After the last 2 years, I think it's accelerated that way of thinking. But I think if you design a building that's well, it's more than likely will be sustainable, right? Going back to, again, fundamental things like, hey, we don't have to live in, and work 9 to 5 in aircon boxes. We can look at a hybrid, right? We don't have to work in the office. We don't have to hop on that, personalized piece of transport that has a huge carbon footprint with one person sitting in a 5-seater car to come to an office to spend 9 hours in an air-conditioned box and then drive another hour back home. Maybe we can, with certain choices like working from home, you're already dealing with your carbon footprint. So I think, at least as a family, we've begun to really think about the carbon footprint of a family, right? The amount of trash we throw out. So I think wellness, sustainability, hand in hand. That's what I'm hoping for. And you mentioned about the wellness city that we're working on. Again, for that client, I mentioned the hospital client, who was still is a bit ahead of the curve in his thinking. So looking at how technology, wellness, bricks and mortar can come together in a sort of a seamless synergy. So, drones not as a techie add-on, sci-fi, flying cars add-on, but as a fundamental way of life. Like everything else, right? How can drugs be delivered from the hospital to each unit? How can wearables that, the older citizens or the older residents are able to then tap into the framework of the hospital and the database so that you're able to support people remotely. All those things are low-lying fruit as far as I'm concerned. I think the fundamental ultimately lies around policy and what we do and what the government can do about these things to further accelerate it and bring it into the forefront of every conversation, every building that's built, every city that's planned, every road that's being planned to be put up in lieu of parks or forest preserves. I think all these big fundamental questions. I'm glad in a way that's been the positive fallout of the pandemic. Wellness has been brought front and center. It's pushed back against this almost relentless rollout of capitalism.
Yeah.
So that is something that's pushing back the other way.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're drawing to a close to this panel, and I'm hearing all kinds of things. I think if we wanted to keep at it, we can go on and on and on. But maybe right now I can ask all of you to give some closing thoughts, or maybe even hopes or aspirations for the next, for Malaysia at least, or for our audience that's listening today, and anything they can catch. What would your closing thoughts be? I'll start with again Architect Mustafa, moving to Dr. Daniel, and then Nicholas.
Okay. I would like to share with you all with a poem that I wrote about COVID. Maybe this one is actually related to Malaysia because I did it the night before the lockdown, and it's actually a thought. And probably this can resonate well, and maybe a next generation of discussion can help. Okay, the topic is actually, in my opinion. So the poem goes this way. People think that the year 2020 is the year of perfection, but it's now a different route. The year 2020 is humanity reset button. To think for a better system to govern our lives, to work and collaborate for a better living, to rethink the way we need to work, to throw away unsustainable methodologies, to accept new collaborators and new game changers with time, to include the younger generation in our decision making in total and not a mere rhetorical, to use the thinking way out of the box, which is business unusual, to accept the thinking system of your subordinates more as a realistic one, to put aside wholly top-down thinking, but to respect the bottoms-up thinking rationally and pragmatically, to listen to the ecosystems more than the economic systems, to allow specialists to rule, to put aside generalists for fear of a recurrence, to live simplistically, to love life as a priceless, to transcend urban protocol systems as a living documents of life, to listen to your aspirations more than your fears, and lastly, to be a human is most important. Mustafa,
Wow.
that's my point. Thanks.
Wow, wow, wow. Brilliant, beautiful, beautiful. If I knew you're going to end with that, I would ask you to end last, actually.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think a lot of poignant
No,
and put thoughts
we
there.
don't need to say anything, Jason.
I have no words.
No, 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 no. So,
Yeah,
next,
wordless,
next, next.
thinking less.
So I'm going to ask, Nicholas, do you have any poems for us that you want to share?
No, that was very lovely, Architect Mustafa. I resonate with every single word of that. I think my biggest takeaway, I mean, we've talked about technology, we've talked about bricks and mortar, and how, we talked about policy. I think that last line about being human is my biggest takeaway, at least, from what's happened over the last 2 years. I think if we can be the human that we are actually, I think things will go a bit better moving forward. Yeah, I resonate with that, Architect Mustafa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Architect Nicholas. Dr. Daniel.
Yeah, I agree with both Musa and Nicholas. And Musa, your poem is a masterpiece, really. I couldn't agree more, as Nicholas has been saying, with every single word you said. But two. One, we do not need to put aside economics, because nowadays there is ESG economics. There is economy for good. There is the way of looking at a sustainable or regenerative economy. And countries around the world are finally adopting it. Two, yes, being human, but we need to learn how to be human in a digitalized world. Digitalization is not something that we can afford to put aside. It's been helping us to transform our life and the way of communicating, to wide open the way we communicate. Look at and I do a little bit of promotion, Jason, if you don't mind.
Please, please.
You look at this backdrop that I have, APPS 2021. APPS 2021 stands for Asia Pacific PropTech Summit 2021. It's a big dream. It's a big dream of a bunch of crazy people that in July, early July, said, we like it, let's go for it. Should we keep it virtual, hybrid, physical? We all agreed about virtual, and the miracle is happening. Now, you start, because I'm going to shock you. We have been organizing on a voluntary basis. We don't have full-time employed people to organize this summit. And it's something that we spend out of 2 days with more than 120 speakers coming from 20 different countries, all of them speaking live, no pre-recording. So with a big challenge in terms of timing and so on. On top, we have been deciding to add in a virtual expo, all right? And how we made this happening at a cost that if I mention the number, you both will start laughing and telling me that I'm joking. because I'm by far below what a small event will cost to be organized physically. It's a totally different approach to spaces that we are having today. There is this beautiful world that is called the digital world, and we are all becoming netizen. And we need to populate this world and use it as much as we can. Then we can be more human. I am spending much more time with my family and my daughter now compared to 3 years ago. I am more at home. Home is my warm place where I live, where I work, where I have fun, where I love, where I discuss, where I fight. But it's my place. It's different, totally different from before. And I don't want to go back there. I'm really looking forward to a future highly regenerative, highly open and democratic, where knowledge can be shared in a very easy way, spaces can be designed and shared in a fantastic and very sustainable way. I'm working on a big project on a self-sustainable smart township, becoming a self-generating economic driver, kind of. Is an idea that I've been building together with a Singaporean friend. We are now proposing it to some local authorities, because the beauty of this is this beautiful modern township, city of the future, somehow component of a city of the future. Houses will cost less than 320,000 ringgit. So you want to know more about this? You want to know more about Malaysian PropTech Association? You want to know more about what is happening in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Hong Kong, in Japan, in Australia, in Europe, in UK, in US, and much more? Come on board on EPS 2021, 26th and 27th of November, 10 a.m. in the morning till 9 p.m. at night, an uninterrupted series of panel discussion on all the possible topics related to property, construction, and technology, PropTech and Contech, but in a language made and constructed for human, not for machines. So we want human to attend. Please come on board. Have a look at our website, www.proptech.org.my. If there is a page event, register there. You will get all the information related to this. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jason.
Great stuff. Thank you, Dr. Daniel. And again, just to acknowledge Architects for allowing this platform to have this conversation. Again, just to mention, the other URL is appsummit, appsummit.asia, to find out more about this event, Apps 2021. Very exciting global conversations happening there. But again, coming back to this, really thank all of you for your time and your sharing. I think this conversation, you can't stop here. We need to keep talking about it, because the way we relate to space, the way we relate to each other in the space, the way we build, the way we move forward and set policies, and I think it's something that we are far from. We don't have a full handle of things yet, but I think we have to stay resilient, right? As a people, as Malaysian, we definitely have a lot of room to grow. But I'm optimistic, and I am hopeful for the future ahead. And I'm hearing from even Architect Mustafa, Architect Nicholas, I think with what you're doing right now as well, I think we are very excited to see the fruits of your labor and the projects that you are working on. And definitely with Dr. Daniel and myself, we are happy on the PropTech side of it, the software and technology. We will definitely want to work more hand in hand and keep the conversation going for a better tomorrow. All right. So that's it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this panel. And
Thank
just
you.
want to say, everyone, please be safe and take care. And do check out Architect Mustafa's poem somewhere if you can. But just search for it somewhere. And then
It's in my Instagram. It's in my Instagram.
And what's your handle?
M Kamal World.
M Kamal World. All right. Maybe make it a poster and put it on the wall, right? All right. Okay, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Be safe.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you on the 26th of November.
Yeah.